February, my favorite book in February is another chunker, which was something I'm going to throw. Hi everybody, my name is Kelsey, and we're about to get very, very nerdy with some of my favorite reads so far this year. So I do this video every year. I keep track of my favorites by month. So I just look at every individual month and then my favorite from that specific month, and then we talk about them. So I have January through May here because it's still pretty early in June. I don't know what I'm going to read, or I don't know what's going to become a favorite. I definitely have a 5-star right now that's winning, but with the month not being over, I didn't really want to include that one yet. So we're just doing the first half of the year through May. I have my caffeine and we're good to go. In the month of January, this one is a contender for favorite of the year. Honestly, not much has been able to surpass it. And I'm sure we can all guess what that is, which is The Women by Kristen Hanna. This was the very first book that I read this year. I did a vlog on this. I read it for book club. This is my very first Kristen Hanna book. I said Christina Lauren. This book follows our main character, Frankie, who is a nurse, or becomes a nurse throughout the course of this book during the Vietnam War. She goes overseas and she spends a couple of years, I think actually it's more than a couple of years, I think she spends 4 years on the front lines at a few different hospitals taking care of soldiers. And then she comes home and spends time trying to acclimate herself back to life. A lot of PTSD representation in this book. There's quite a lot of trigger warnings. We have obviously war and the trauma from that, so PTSD. We have infant death, loss of a loved one, medical trauma, miscarriage, and mentions of suicide. So obviously all the things that you expect to see from a book written during war, and especially someone who was on the front lines. But this was a lot. Not only is it about war, but then it's about her coming home and not being cared for in the right way, in the sense of her family lied to everyone and told them that she was studying abroad instead of actually on the front line because it wasn't looked right, or they didn't think it looked right because she did that. And then she's trying to get help for her PTSD that she obviously doesn't know what it is at that time, but that's clearly what it is. And none of the VA hospitals will help her because she's a woman, and obviously women didn't have the same thing. We're only here for men, the ones who actually fought in the war, even though she's I was on the front line, I was there, and they're great, doesn't count. And then you've got the friendships that she makes while she's there. And I just love the entirety of the story because it obviously is so well researched. Of course it is. But the fact that Kristen Hanna could write such a devastating story, but to do it with the grace and do it with clearly having a lot of the historical things to back it up was amazing. And the way that she was able to write this story and make me care about these characters from the first page when it's set during a thing, aka war, that I don't like reading about. And for some reason, I was all about it in this book. So the writing style was amazing. The character development was incredible. Watching this very flawed person figure out how to be was very interesting. And I'm really glad that this was my first step into her writing, because I've read this and I've read The Nightingale, and this is definitely a favorite. And just the story, the plot, there was a plot, it did keep me going. But it was really a character study about the woman, about Frankie, and the relationships that she has, the friendships, her 2 best friends that she makes who are fellow nurses. Amazing. I loved them. They all have very different paths in life, and I liked seeing how they ended up, and the fact that they are still very, very close friends. Amazing. And there was, I could rave about this book forever. Of course, I will leave the vlog linked above so you can check it out. But I devoured and loved this book, and I'm so glad that I read it. I tabbed the bejeebus and highlighted the crap out of this book. This was my first for a lot of things this year, and it was incredible. In February, my favorite is one that I still have not stopped thinking about. It is also a contender for favorite of the year. I'm not sure it surpasses The Women, but it's very, very close. But it's also very different because it's a romantasy book, and that is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. This book, I feel like, is kind of polarizing because you either absolutely devour and love it, or you cannot stand what's happening. And I fell into the devour and love portion of the fandom. And like, I even got my friend who we talk about all things ACOTAR all the time. Like, the way that we communicate our love language is by sending each other reels about ACOTAR. I got her to read this, and she is also obsessed with it, and it makes me incredibly happy. I loved this book. Okay, so I should probably tell you what this is about. We follow our main character, Saris, who lives in a desert-like wilderness. She's in the lowest section of this world, basically, and she's just trying to survive. She's a younger brother that she's trying to help out. And then something happens and she ends up having to go to the castle, and in the events that take place there, I know it's very vague, she ends up finding this sword that is stuck in a pool of metal and somehow is able to get it out of the pool of metal, opening a portal to the Fae world. And this guy named Kingfisher comes through, and they end up in a different world, and they end up, it's very, very cold, so it's polar opposite of where she lives now, and they basically make a bargain. So she mistakenly binds herself to Kingfisher, and there is a few things, like, it's obviously way more than that, but like, can you see the tabbing that went down, the highlighting? Again, I like highlighted many parts, many pages of this book. I loved the plot. I loved the romance. I do think this leans more romance, so like people who like fantasy romance, where their fantasy is the bigger plot of the romance, this might not be your thing, because I think the romance and the plot play equal roles in this book. But Faye, I mean, were we surprised that I liked it? Were we surprised that I loved it? I think not. But I mean, it's a broody main male character. He's kind of what the internet likes to phrase a shadow daddy. So, like, that's the vibe. If you like the character of Asriel from ACOTAR, I think you will enjoy this. The banter is fantastic. The romance is, I wouldn't consider it a slow burn, but the progression was very realistic. It wasn't insta-love. It wasn't anything like that. I mean, he's very flawed. He has a lot of trauma in his past, and she's there to help. And, like, the fact that he is Fae and she is human, that plays a lot, because he looks at her as very, breakable. And she's like, I can handle things myself. And she's right, she can. So, you've got a badass main character who's very, very sassy. You've got a almost alpha male, not quite, alpha male teddy bear of a main male lead. And the banter and the sarcasm and the everything and the I don't want to love her, but I do. And I don't like him, but I am attracted to him. Like, all of the things that, like, you would expect in a romantasy is in here. I was wholeheartedly obsessed. And also, it's a chunk, like I mentioned. You guys know, big books terrify me, and I don't want to pick them up because they are big. I flew through this, well, I didn't fly through this one. I think I read this over the course of a month, but I did that on purpose because I wanted to make sure that every time I was reading this book, I was actually giving it my full attention, and that, I think, helped my love of it. So I just happened to finish this in February, but it was, I mean, I get the hype. I get the hype. Trigger warnings, forgot to mention, trigger warnings for this book. We have gore, physical trauma, and then threat of abuse and sexual assault, but that doesn't actually happen. So my favorite book for March is The Duchess Hunt by Lorraine Heath, which is the second book in the Once Upon a Dukedom trilogy. I really like this trilogy. Like, as a whole, it is fantastic, but this one is definitely the standout novel for me. In the first book in the series, there's a duke that plays a pretty big role in that book, and he is the main male love interest here. This follows the Duke of Kingsland, who, like I mentioned, was a pretty big role in the first book, and he is very straightforward. He doesn't think he can actually fall in love. He's got some past trauma with his parents. So, also on that note, trigger warnings for familial abuse. It's all historical. It's not on the page, but it is mentioned quite a lot. So anyway, he doesn't think he can fall in love, so he knows he needs he's a duke. He knows he needs a wife. He knows he needs an heir. So he doesn't really care who he ends up marrying because he knows he's not going to fall in love with her. So he basically sends a little letter in the newspaper and says, yep, if you are interested in becoming my future wife, write me a letter and I'll pick through. And actually what happens is his secretary, Penelope, is actually the one who is looking through and like figuring out who would actually work and who wouldn't. But of course, she's got a past and things happen, and it's their romance. And I loved it. It was so well done. They are such real people. They're fleshed out. I mean, that's true for any Lorraine Heath book. She has really fleshed out characters. They have fantastic backstories. They are almost the most perfect pair that I have seen because they think very, very similarly. And because of that, they work well together, but also like it's very common in historical romances where something will happen at the end and someone will make a change to their dreams, their goals, their life's ambition for love. And sometimes that works, but most of the time it's the woman giving up something. And in this book, that doesn't happen. Caitlin does not try to change her. He knows who she is. He's happy with who she is. And so maybe her goal changes in the sense of like how she achieves the goal is different than what she expected, but the goal itself still happens. And so she doesn't give up what she wants out of life because of this guy. He just is there and can help her now. And I love that part of it because it was, I mean, that's very real. Like, you're not going to change. You can change parts of you, but you're not going to change your life's ambition for someone. You know what I mean? So I really like this one. It was very well done. I gave it 5 stars, and I think I paused halfway through because I think March was the month that my daughter got a stomach bug and then graciously gifted it to me. And so I think I was out for like a week. Like, I didn't read for like a week, and I didn't want to read. Like, I don't want to pick up things when I'm not feeling well. And so it took me a while to dive back in, and I had started this book, so I put it down like halfway through and then finished the second half like later in the month. And clearly, I mean, I still gave it 5 stars. Everything in this video gets 5 stars. So like, I did not have a problem stopping because like I remembered everything, and the fact that this can stand the test of like a 2-week break in the middle, I feel like says a lot. For April, my favorite book that month was The 13th Child by Erin A. Craig. I have raved about this book like nonstop. I have read something by Erin A. Craig before this. I read this, but it was YA, which I think this technically was YA as well. And it'd been a while. It was also kind of spooky. This is definitely more gothic-y. So this book, trigger warnings for this book, for some reason all my books have trigger warnings. Trigger warnings for mentions of suicide and medical procedures / gore. So this book follows our main character, Hazel, who is the 13th child, and she is very much unwanted. And there are some gods in this world, and the god of like death basically shows up to her parents and says, I will take her off your hands. Like, her mom is still actively pregnant this time. She's like, I will take her off your hands, don't worry about it. But then he never comes to get her until she is 12. So eventually he comes to get her, and he basically trains her to be a healer. So she has, because she's a 13th child, she has the ability, like all 13 children, have this ability to be a little bit more magical than your average person. So she studies up on all things healing, and then discovers that she kind of has this ability where she can touch someone and know exactly what's wrong with them, and then use that healing knowledge to actually heal them. But on the reverse side of that, she can also touch someone and know that they can't be safe, and she knows that this person needs to die because they're not, like, she can't save them, but also, like, if they live, there could be a ripple effect, and it could affect and hurt a lot of other people. So she ends up taking the life of a few people humanely so that they pass without pain. But of course, those lives live on her brain. And then the big kind of like climactic thing that happens here is there is a king who is sick, and she gets called, because she's this amazing healer, she gets called to his castle to help save him. But this is basically a character study of Hazel's life, but fantastical. And I love the world this author has created. Like, it's so unique, And like there are elements that I've seen in other books, but there are like the magic system, and like I'm thinking specifically, she goes down to the domain of this god who becomes her godfather, and it's so different than what you would expect it to be, but it's also like nothing I've ever read. And I just really liked it. I liked the character of Hazel. I liked seeing her because you see her from like age 7 all the way to, honestly, I don't even remember. It's most of her life. And you see her change. You see her grow into herself. You see her finally take charge of her life, what she wants out of life, and things like that. And I really, really enjoyed this story. It's atmospheric. The writing is beautiful. I could read about this book forever. I loved it. If you like kind of that gothic vibe, I think this one would work. I think it would be a good fall book. It's not scary or anything like that, but it has that atmospheric fall, witchy, occulty, gothic-y vibe to it. Anyway, it was amazing. And then the last book that we are going to talk about is my May pick. And actually, this is the only book in this list that isn't a 5-star. It's a 4.5 star. It's pretty high, but I didn't have any 5 stars in May. Either way, it was Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. I really love this book. I really love this author. I love this world. This is a spin-off series from her Kingdom of the Wicked series, which you guys know I like devoured, and it became my personality for a while. So in that world, there are 7 princes who represent the 7 deadly sins. And in that series specifically, I mean, we meet all of them, but we follow Wrath mainly. And in this series, the spin-off series, we follow different princes, and this one follows Sin. So Sin is kind of taking part of this game. It's been happening for a very long time, and the game is basically to save his court. So one of the things that he has to do, it's like lots of clues, and he follows the clues and eventually gets to the end. And one of these clues leads him to the human world, specifically to this woman who is a painter. And he needs something from her to be painted. So he comes to her, and they have feelings and things. And she ends up getting swept up in this game, and they continue on this like mystery plot. It goes to the human world, it goes back to their world. It's very fantastical. It follows other princes, like they show up a few times. Ones that I have loved in the past. We see our main couple from the previous series, and so this definitely takes place after the events of the Kingdom of the Wicked series. So I think if you don't mind being spoiled for like the really big plot things in that, they are mentioned, but otherwise you don't need them to read this book, because anything world building wise that you would need to know, she does a good job of explaining and kind of reminding you from that previous series. Because it'd been a while since I read the previous series, and I was afraid there were some things that I had forgotten, and she did a good job of kind of like poking and reminding me of stuff that had happened if it was important to this plot. So I love this series. I love her fantastical writing. Again, this is one where like the romance and the plot are pretty even in this story. A lot of people would probably consider this a romantasy, or a book that the romance is the main plot. I think they're pretty even. I like her world building. I liked how it expanded in this book. I like some of the plot twists that we had. I like the mystery element and like the heistiness of it, and the sense of like they were solving all of these clues and having to do things. So I liked all of that. I mean, I feel like it should not be a surprise that I liked a Carrie Maniscalco book when it comes to this world, because I'm obsessed with this world. And that's it. Like I said, I don't have June's quite yet, but that'll come near the end of the year when I do my second half of the year. But those are the books that I would consider my favorites. There's definitely some contenders for favorites of the year in here. Expect to see these again, I'm sure, at the end of the year when we do a wrap up. But I hope that you guys enjoyed. Please let me know, as always, if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in today's video, or if there is, like, you're like me and you kind of keep track of your books, what are some of your favorites from the year so far? Leave a few down below. I would love to know some that you are enjoying reading. But if you like this video, and I very much hope that you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you're part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there, as well as other fun bookish links, so go check all that out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!